How's it going, guys? I am Otakushinsaku back again for another video reaction. This one on Tsiah's video, what you would want from my Fate/stay night remake. Uh, let's just get into this. So here's the thing. Before we get into this, let me just answer the question. What would I want from a Fate/stay night remake? I would basically just want extra scenes and more details and stuff like that. Maybe another route. Maybe smushing together Hollow Ataraxia with Fate's Stay Night into one big story. Um, just to cover all the bases of everything that went down in the Fifth Holy Grail War. Um, but definitely, very top of the list. Circled multiple times, underlined, bolded, italicized, everything. The thing that I would want at the very top of the list is as uncensored as possible. Every single H scene is included, and it's uncensored. It's presented in the way that it was presented in the original story. Not just the H scenes, but also all of the violence. I want a Fate/stay night remake to come out and potentially be rated adults only on Steam, right? Like, I want the game to come out and be full on, unapologetic, adults only H story, H game, whole nine yards.
It's looking like it's about that time. The annual Please Bring Stay Night to the West. We got the patron request from Magoo. He says, I'm on the 20th anniversary remake code. First off, do you think they're going to remake the VN or just adapt the Fate route? Maybe both. Second, if Nasu himself gave you control over a Fate/stay night remake, what would you change, add, or remove? By the way, if you haven't already, make sure you guys sign up for the Patreon. You get access to early content and priority on your request. So if you guys didn't see, we do have an announcement around the corner regarding the 20th anniversary of the original Fate/stay night novel. We don't know what that is yet, but a lot of people are assuming it's either the Fate route or possibly redoing the VN itself. Now for me, when it comes to the likelihood of this scenario, if I'm being optimistic, he might just announce a remake. It has been 2 decades, it's been a long time, it definitely will be more than suitable for the timing. If I'm being realistic, they might announce a Fate route adaptation at best, and it's probably gonna be done by Ufotable, but that's just a wild guess. There's a lot of things that we can get into in regards to what can be implemented if they do decide to come back around and get back into it. A lot of people complain about the exposition overall, so that definitely could be one of them. As far as music goes, personally, I never felt like Fate had a problem with music. Even to this day with Grand Order, it either feels like it keeps getting better, or at the very least, it reaches a baseline level of quality that you come to expect. But all of it is good. I love the music when it comes to Type Moon. Definitely want more CGs, more graphics. That's a part of what they did in Rialta Nua, although it wasn't that many, not nearly as much as it would be if they decided to flat out do a real remake. So I'll be looking real forward to that. There are a lot of routes that have been tossed up into the air. Ayako, Medea, Ilya, some of which, as you all know, ended up being shifted into Hollow Ataraxia and more than likely Prisma, but I still have nothing against that. If he wants to put some of that in, even if that means that he wants to stretch out some of the routes he has, I'm all for it. One thing for certain that I really want to see is all of the off-screen scenes that we weren't able to be a part of. And I know that's a part of the allure too. You're not supposed to see everything, but I mean, I do want him to squeeze in as much as he can fit. I want to see Emiya versus Hurt, the whole thing. Gil versus Ku for 12 hours. Come on, man.
Oh, that's another thing. Speaking of which, yeah, he's right. There could be many scenes that they could add. Again, that's why personally my idea would be to smush Hollow Ataraxia and Fate together. Another thing that they could bring up, Person A, or Person A from Hollow Ataraxia, the prologue thing, because she actually gets revealed to be a real character, and becomes a protagonist in her own fate story later on. So, person A in that whole thing, that could definitely be a scene that's actually added where we actually see from her perspective, because in her backstory it's revealed that she bumbles around Fuyuki during the war and actually runs into Kurei. She bumbles into the church and sees Kurei and a guy with blonde hair. We know who that is. She walked into the church when Kurei was talking to Gilgamesh. So, uh, like, so person A could definitely be added to the story as well. That could definitely be a scene that's added to a potential Fate Stay Night remake instead of just a remaster.
Man, you can do people like that. This has to be shown. Sasaki fending off all 5 of the other servants, which we kind of got a glimpse of, but even that can get more exploration because it's like we never really got to see the full scope of that. What was Zoken doing in the Fate and the UB Dub routes? I know that it's an understood thing that we're just supposed to ignore it and he wasn't a part of the story, but I know he wasn't just sitting in the house twiddling his fingers. He had to be doing something, so what was it? At least something to address that. And speaking of Zoken, it would be nice to see the progression of his character all the way up into that state. You know, we kind of don't really get to see that. We see him as an adult, we seen him as a child, sort of, and then it just leaps all the way into him being this 500-year-old carcass with nothing in between really but excerpts from all over the place. So I want to see that, him back in.
Oh yeah, because there's a lot of really great stuff that he did. Like Zoken is actually, like, again, a very complicated character because, for example, Zoken when the Nazis tried to take the Grail and all that stuff, he fought against that. Like, you could say what you want about Zoken, but the man did do everything he could to make sure that the Grail did not fall into Nazi hands. So take that for what you will.
In Russia, that can get addressed. We do have some people that got in on this from Discord, and I want to go through some threads on this too. Dento says that they want an Ayako route. Even the small portions that we got of Ayako and Ataraxia, I wouldn't mind seeing more, and everybody else in general. I'm just doubting that Ayako has enough to fill a route, which is probably why things ended up the way that they did. And I don't really want him to force anything that isn't going to be with all his intention, which is something that Nasu wouldn't do anyway, but just saying. Zayd says that they want more bad ends. I'm completely down for that too. Not only does the bad ends give more context to the character themselves, but they also end up being some of the most interesting parts of the novel, which is crazy to think about because they're supposed to be mistakes, but they really show you a lot. If he can squeeze some more of those in, that would be really nice. You know, things like Sparksliner High, Superhero, Femme Fatale, all these different endings only made more of a contribution to the story. And you know, if we get more bad ends, that means that we get more Tiger Dojo, which is always a good thing. Sharkman says that they want more references to Best Girl Enforcer. No doubt on that one. It would be really nice for people to have more access to Bazette because I feel like her character really gets glossed over. I know that she's not supposed to be the center focus because that's what Ataraxia is for anyway, but it still would be nice to get some depth on what actually happened between her and Kirei. Maybe some real conversations like they were having in Ataraxia instead of just leaving us to fill in the gaps, if that's possible. It wouldn't take up too much time, and it doesn't really take away from anything because there's still a lot of her character to be explored anyway, so you can't give up that much to begin with. Now for the threads, we got one that says Rialta Nua already exists. What we need is an official English port on Steam and current consoles. And I thought this was a real weird statement because, again, it's almost like you don't want that, you know, because the main thing with Nasu is that it appears that he has no intention, at least as of late, on releasing his older works without some type of renewal. You know, a lot of people have been asking for Mihoyo for years. We finally got it. A lot of people have been asking for a Tsukihime remake. We finally got it, at least the first part of it. That's a start. But I feel like the initiative for him to even bring it to the West would start with him doing a remake. What better way to bring in 20 years of excellence than ironing out the wrinkles in his work? We're seeing what happened when he did that with the Tsukihime remake. It's incredible. Now, I know a lot of people think there shouldn't be a remake because of Rialto Nua, but even Rialto Nua came out in 2007. Bro, it's still 17 years old. There will be nothing wrong with getting a remake. And not only that, but if you got so many people complaining about this exposition, if he releases the old work just to run people off again, then we still get nowhere. We want people to enjoy it for what it is. So if he can tighten it up and do a remake, that would be great. The next one, unlikely. Fate Stay Night didn't need a remake as much as Tsukihime did from a technical standpoint. Not that I mind seeing all the graphics in HD or fully orchestrated background music. I do agree with that. I wouldn't say it necessarily needs it, but if we're being honest, I've seen a lot of people say the Tsukihime remake wasn't needed. Now, I really think that those people are original content elitists. You know, those are the guys that want to hold the original content to the chest to say they were the first ones to be a part of it. But I see that a lot. I thought that Tsukihime needed a remake. In regards to Fate, it wouldn't hurt. It's been a long time. There's a lot of things that have changed. He probably has some new tricks up his sleeve. A lot of things have been retconned since then. I'm willing to bet that he has a lot to say. Not only that, but you know, things like more info on Archer's background can get explored in UB Dub. I would love if they could capitalize on the idea of Saber being a ruler in the past and give it more priority. Give more priority to her being King Arthur in general, and give more background to that to make her route feel more whole. Give it more so of that Garden of Avalon vibe that it should have had to begin with. Heaven's Field, same thing. I wouldn't mind if he
Oh yeah, since we're talking about this stuff, I would not mind if for the super extra special extra ending we get where Shiro makes it to Avalon, I would not mind and like extra scenes added to that to explain which version of Shiro did it and specifically how he did it. Because right now we have fan theories on what might have went down, but I want to see specifically Shiro doing it. I want to actually have it confirmed forever, put it, you know, in the ground, confirmed specifically what Shiro did, you know, and everything that went down to getting to Avalon. Like, I want to see that whole adventure, right? I want to, you know, I want to see, again, we're, you know, I don't like, we don't need to see like every minute, but what I'm saying, like, you know, do at least a, you know, montage of what he did and all the major parts that went into it. How he, like, how did he even discover that he even could make it into Avalon? Like, and then how did he discover what to do and how did he feel about, like, oh my god, I can actually do this. I can actually break the universe in half and get into Avalon. You know, I like, basically I want to see the story told from his perspective of making it into Avalon. Doing something, you know, again, doing something that not even Bedivere could do in Fate Grand Order.
took some time to explore the rest of the Mato family because we know very little about them prior to us getting into the war. I would love to see how Takeuchi would handle his art designs, especially going into Shiro in modern day, because I know that he's upped his game a lot since then. I know there will be a lot of work for him, but they do have the help and they do have the money. Again, it's a different time. The Tsukihime remake got announced in 2008. We just got the first half in 2021, right? So you can definitely tell there was a lot of time where they just didn't have the funding to do anything. But with the explosion of FGO and everything else that funneled into it, they now have a lot more leg room and they're able to get things done. If you couldn't tell, the past 5 years has been crazy for Type Moon. I mean, back to back to back. So if people start asking for it now, At least they'll have it in mind so it won't be 15 years again. Here's another one. We already have a remake. It's called Rialta Nua. True, to a degree, but here's the thing about that, and I feel like a lot of people don't understand the difference between a remake and a remaster. Like, Rialta Nua being a remake is the biggest stretch that you can find because they didn't change that much. Music, more graphics, voice acting, and they changed the scenes a little bit to work around the eroge. And of course, they gave us last episode. But honestly, Rialta.
And again, that's why specifically I want people to remember, I did not read Rialta Nua. I did not read Rialta Nua. So Rialta Nua being released on Steam would be the first time I read Rialta Nua. The version of Fate Stay Night that I read when I got into the franchise was a fan English patch for the original uncensored game. And that's why I keep saying uncensored, 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 because that's the story I read. I did not read Rialta Nua. I read the original visual novel with all of the eroge. All of it. All of it I read. So, yeah. That's why to this very day I keep harping on the fact that I want the Fate franchise to be as uncensored as possible, because that's how I was introduced to it. That's how I'm the most comfortable with the franchise, is when it's uncensored and when it's allowed to go there, right? When it's allowed to be erotic, when it's allowed to tell stories that and have violence that you could only find in an adult-only game, because it's like, because again, since the original game was an eroge and was going to be sold to adults only, it allowed Nasu to be like, well, I mean, if this story is going to be sold to adults only, then I don't have to hold back, not just for the sex, but I don't have to hold back in terms of the violence either.
Rialta Nua is just a glorified remaster. It just worked out the kinks and buffed up what we had. But a complete remake would truly be a breath of fresh air. There's so many things that I'm sure he wanted to do that he couldn't do, because you gotta meet deadlines, and he probably didn't want to stall it any longer. As a matter of fact, Nasu has had discussions on record how he wants to make changes to the routes. You have the one where he's talking about the Fate route. Typical Urobuchi. I really can't pull the wool over your eyes. I intended to take that to the grave with me, but I guess this 10-year anniversary is a good place to talk about it. Just like Urobuchi said, it's difficult to call the relationship between Shiro and Saber a relationship between a man and a woman. Saber has fought for a long time as a ruler of Britain, but then turned into a girl all of a sudden and fell in love with Shiro. It's pretty ridiculous when you think about it. This is Nasu himself saying that about his own work. He knows the relationship with Saber is too forced, and I felt like this for a long time. That's why I was saying I really want them to prioritize her being King Arthur over that relationship. Now obviously you can't remove the relationship, because that's pretty much what the entire novel is founded upon. It'd be strange if UB-Dub was relationship rooted, HF is relationship rooted, and then here you just have him and Saber walking side by side. So they don't have to go as far as chopping it in half, but you could take it back a bit. The whole, oh, I don't want you to go out here because you're a girl, was pretty perpetuated from what I remember on an unnecessary level. But I really wanted to push it towards that sort of boy meets girl story. So as a last resort, I had Shiro continually say things to her like, but you're a girl and girls aren't supposed to fight, in order to remind the users that she really is a girl. It's like the Arthur's actually the one trying to convince Saber that she's a girl. I feel like I could have written it a lot better now, but that was the best I could do at the time. Now remember what I just said in the other video. It was pretty much this verbatim, the best he could do at the time. Even he feels like he could carve out something better, as he should. And I believe he can, considering how he's writing now. I feel like he could do better by accident. There's definitely a lot of things to consider, and we'll get more into that on a video about the Fate route in general. I think that'll answer a lot of the things that I see the most. Here's another one. Does Fate Stay Night need it? Probably. It definitely wouldn't hurt. It's the biggest Type Moon hit, and it's now the only one without modern graphics. Exactly. Also, some aspects of the story would benefit from Nasu's more mature writing. Do I want it? Yes, absolutely. Will we get it? Very unlikely. I've lost almost all hope to see it or a Fate anime remake. This man is giving up. I will abandon hope completely if they don't announce anything next year for the 20th anniversary. Yeah, I don't think it will be that unrealistic to expect at least the Fate anime with this announcement. So I feel like he has to be more positive on that point, because you can't pretend like Type Moon hasn't been putting out recently, because they've been going in. And the comment really spoke to a lot of what I've been saying before. It's a different time. We need that modern Fate to get people more into it. People swear up and down they want people to read the novel. They want people to read the novel, but it's super outdated. Like, wouldn't it be amazing to get people into the novel through a remake? They reap all the benefits that even we couldn't get because we had.
Yes, but for me, when I say I want people to read the novel, I want them to read the original uncensored version. And so if Rialto Nua is the one that's put out on Steam, then I will continue and say that no, skip the Steam release, skip a console release or whatever, and read, and let me load up on my PC the original Fate Stay Night with the fan English patch, and you read that. Like, that's what I would say to people who want to read Fate Stay Night. Like, if you ask me personally, if you ask me, hey, Otakushinsaku, I want to get into Fate Stay Night. I want to read Fate Stay Night. Should I read the one on Steam? Should I read Rialto Nua? Should I, I would say, fuck no. Do everything you possibly can to avoid Rialto Nua. And read the original. Yes, it has outdated graphics. Whatever. Right? I still see people playing the original Pong. And like, it also outdated graphics. For fuck's sake, people were excited when Doom 64 was given a Steam port, right? So don't come up to me with outdated graphics when people to this day are still playing Mario 64 and shit, right? And also the original Mario on the NES and shit. Like, don't come up to me with outdated graphics and shit. Yeah, it's kind of sad that we don't have a proper remake of the original, or like whatever. If you ask me personally, I would look you dead in the eyes and say, read the original. The uncensored original. And if you have a hard time tracking it down, I have no problems sharing with you the links and the stuff that I have that can get you in touch with the original novel, and you can play that.
Had to work with the status quo. Now, I personally didn't have a problem even with the OG version of the VN novel, not even Rialto Nua. It was still fine the way that it was. I just know it would be a lot better if he brought it back around. It wasn't like Tsukihime where it had like 10 songs. Mind you, Tsukihime was 40 hours long. It had like 10 songs. So you listening to the same 10 songs for 40 hours. Those songs are seared into my mind. Here's another one. The only Fate remake we need is the other routes. Let's go Ayako. Compared to Tsukihime and Mihoyo, Fate Stay Night holds up really well. It's pretty much their big break, all things considered, as a company. I honestly don't think we'll get a remake until leadership changes. So it seems as if people aren't against the idea of there being a remake. They just realize that the palette is way too congested already, which I can see that, but we've kind of gotten most of the things that we've asked for constantly. Right now they're working on the remake of Fate Extra. You telling me that he's gonna remake Fate Extra, but he's not gonna remake Stay Night? Let's be real. he has something in the pocket, he just hasn't revealed it yet. It seems as if he really wants to remake all of his older stuff, because the way that he feels about his old stuff, he just knows that he can do better. It's to the point where we've gotten so much that the memes aren't even memes anymore. They really came to life. Now we just need adaptations. We need firm and polished adaptations, which we'd be lucky to get in this lifetime. Ataraxia adaptation, people think they're confused now. A proper Tsukihime adaptation, which, considering that we're getting Mihoyo, isn't all that unlikely, but I think he at least wants to finish the Far Side first. He's got to get that out first. I can't see him running it side by side. A Melty Blood anime, we're already getting Strange Fake, so we don't even have to worry about that. Prototype adaptations, I love a remake. New CGs, music, and a rewritten story all together, but it was released in a weird time where it could get a remake, but it doesn't need it. That is true. Technically speaking, it was fine, and the art still very much so holds up. I believe that a port to the consoles in Steam and an official translation would be enough. I would also love to see the same for Hollow Ataraxia, but that one really doesn't need a.
And yeah, in Hollow Ataraxia, I would love to see touched up and stuff like that. But again, with where Type Moon is and how they make decisions, I just don't want to see a Rialto Nua type thing happen to a Hollow Ataraxia where they massively tone down the adult aspects of the story of Hollow Ataraxia. Right? Because it's like, dude, why? Why tone down? Like, why are you like? Why are you scared of something that you did? That you did? Like, own up to it. Like Nasu's just like, oh, I can't believe Fate Stay Night has all this eroge content into it. It's like, dude, you fucking wrote it. What the fuck?
Remake. Yeah, I don't think Ataraxia needs a remake. I think Ataraxia just needs an adaptation. I'll take a VN remake, but Ataraxia, I feel like it's fine where it's at. If he wants to do that years down the road, that's fine. But I don't really consider Ataraxia to be that type of a work to begin with. He never really lets it rest, so I do have high hopes. It's like every year he's been hitting us with a banger, a novel, a manga, a port, at least something. I would take a remake over more half-hearted FGO chapters, but then at the same time, FGO is kind of the livelihood of keeping the consistency. So it's like a real catch-22 with that one. I don't think people understand how blessed we are to have FGO. I know people run it into the ground, but it's doing a lot of work as being that main engine for everything else. I mean, they have so much more now because of it. A lot of this wouldn't even be a consideration because the production for all of this, especially adaptations, aren't cheap. The only thing that I'll say now is that if he does remake it, they're gonna hold him to a really high standard, especially these newer guys, because it's not like it was the first time around. When he first started, everything was fresh and nothing was really built, so it was okay for him to make certain pitfalls. Now he has to try to make sense of all the new fake content. So now they're gonna try to hold him to the fire for anything that he writes. They're gonna be like, hey, but they said this in the FGO timeline. As if each timeline doesn't have their own thing going. It's not like Tsukihime where he made Tsukihime and then it cut off. Fate continued, it just wasn't the original that continued. So it's a lot different in that aspect. You have things like Tsukihime 2, Mihoyo 2, and even a real Fate Stay Night 2 that could also be addressed, but a lot of work would have to be done.
Yeah, a lot of work would have to be done and all of that. But in either case, I wouldn't, again, if Type Moon can get to a position where they do not mind releasing adults-only eroge content, I would not mind a remake of Fate Stay Night and, Hollow Ataraxia and all of that. But we're not there. We have a leadership at Type Moon that is wanting to make Fate Stay Night and the entire Type Moon and all Type Moon franchises basically that shonen, right? They want to basically have every Type Moon franchise be for 14-year-olds at the oldest, right? They no longer want like Type Moon would, I guarantee it, Type Moon would love if basically like the only thing that Type Moon cares about when it comes to their adult audience is our money, right? Outside of that, they don't care. Like Type Moon's just like, well, we like it. We like adults because they have credit cards and money, so that they can spend on us for our stuff and in figure and order. But we're not going to actually make any content specifically and exclusively for the adults anymore. We did that in 2004. We did that in like the early 2000s, but we're no longer going to do that. And basically, for anyone who wants an adult only, Fate story or Tsukihime story or anything like that, go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself. Right? Because fuck you. We want to turn Fate Stay Night and Tsukihime and all this stuff into shonen that we market at 12-year-old boys, right? We don't want to tell stories that are actually adult, that actually have real violence and real stakes in them. We don't want to tell stories that could actually, traumatize the 14-year-old boys watching it. We don't want to tell a story like Heaven's Feel anymore, where you're inside the mind of a woman who's being sexually assaulted, and we don't cut away from the sexual assault. We have the sexual assault completely play out. We tell a story from literally inside the mind of a woman who's having her who's having her clothes ripped off, who is feeling the pain and anguish of a unwanted body part being inserted into her, right? Like, we're not going to do that anymore. We did that with the original Fate Stay Night, and then we tried to reel that back with Rialta Nua. And now if you give them the full, if you give them the full right to make a remake, then I fear that basically Heaven's Feel would, like, here's how I feel that a Fate Stay Night remake would go down. We would keep the original Fate, but they would but that whole thing with Artoria in the cabin would be replaced with how it was adapted in Studio Dean. So basically, we wouldn't see anything going down. We would see Shiro floating in this ethereal mind space and see the dragon that is Artoria. So we would see that because you can't show the eroge content anymore, because then you can't sell the game to 14-year-olds. And then in Unlimited Blade Works, same thing, where instead of the mana transfer process going down the way it went down in the original novel, with the eroge scene, no, it would be replaced with the anime adaptation where the mana transfer happened because Shiro took off his shirt, turned his back to Rin, and she put his hand on his back. Right? And then for Heaven's Feel, I feel like they would just completely excise Heaven's Feel. Like, I feel like they would just completely just go, Heaven's Feel didn't happen, there's only two routes. No. Because Heaven's Feel you can't say. Like, with Heaven's Feel, the entire theme, the main theme and point of the story is on adolescent sexuality and sexual assault and all of that. The entire theme of the story is that. So if they wanted to sell the game to 14-year-old boys, I feel like they would just completely excise Heaven's Feel and be done with it, because there's no saving Heaven's Feel, right? Like, Heaven's Feel is an adult-only story from its very inception, right? Not only is it adults only in terms of the sexuality content, but it's adults only in terms of the violence depicted in it. So they would have to just basically completely excise and delete Heaven's Feel from a potential Fate Stay Night remake in order to continue down the path that they have chosen, which is the path of making the entire franchise a shonen franchise for 13 and 14-year-old boys. So yeah. So that you can clearly tell that I have a lot of pessimism because of the current rank and file leadership that is at Type Moon right now, where they are doing everything possible to they're doing everything possible that they can to erase from their minds stain that is the original visual novels that were Oroge novels, right? I'm pretty sure in their minds that they just think that, well, we had to make them Oroge to sell them at the time, but now that we are a proper company, you know, buttoned up and everything, we now sell our franchises to 14-year-old boys, you know, to 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old boys. So we're going to do everything we can to try to put a lid on Pandora's box, and, you know, and put all that back away, and basically be like, what Oroge? There was never Oroge. Fate Stay Night was never Oroge. What are you talking about? Either case, I'm Otakushinsaku. I hope to see you guys next time for my next video reaction, whatever video I make next, live stream, whatever. I will see you guys next time.